What's up guys, it's James Allen, the out-of-state investor, and today I want to talk about how I was able to use the BRRRR strategy to get a free rental property, get $57,156 back in my pocket at closing, all while doing this from out of state. Now the BRRRR strategy is one of the best ways to scale your real estate portfolio in the beginning stages, especially because you can get all your capital back and reinvest those funds into buying more and more rental properties. So today I'm going to share with you how I was able to find this deal, how I was able to pay for this deal, and also how I knew that this deal would make for a perfect BRRRR strategy deal. Now before I get started, do me a favor, support the channel and smash that like button. And if it's your first time visiting the channel, I buy rental properties and flip houses both in and out of my state, and I teach you guys how you can build massive wealth doing the same thing. So if any of that sounds interesting, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell. And with that said, let's jump into it. Alright, so this real estate deal really started all the way back in the summer of 2020 when we were in the height of the pandemic and there was a lot of uncertainty surrounding the housing market and what might happen in the future. To put everything in context, I gotta take you back a month before I even found this deal in the first place. You see, I get asked a lot how I was able to get started in real estate, how I found the money to do that, how I keep affording to buy all these properties, and one of the main components to this, especially with getting started in real estate, has been living below our means. Now the more we grow our income every year, the more I'm tempted to upgrade our lifestyle. I'm not gonna lie, there's been many times when I've been tempted to buy a nice car, or I've been tempted to upgrade our lifestyle to a certain level, but for the most part, we've done a pretty good job of living below our means and being able to net money on a monthly basis. We don't normally spend a lot on going to events and things like that. We drive a 10-year-old minivan, our house is well within our means, and so overall, we budget pretty conservatively. So the reason I tell you this is going back to 2020, we're coming up to my 7th wedding anniversary, and my wife has always wanted to have a ring upgrade. You see, we got married back when I was 23 and I was young and I was broke and I couldn't really afford anything nice, so I just got the best ring I could afford back then. So I decided for our wedding anniversary that I would surprise her. She's been wanting a ring upgrade for a while and we've been delaying it because we want to reinvest our funds, but in this case I wanted to surprise her and give her a pretty nice ring. It was going to be a pretty expensive upgrade for a ring. I figured she'd already sacrificed for several years now, reinvesting all our profits back into more real estate, and because of that we already had cash on hand at that point aside from our reserves, and so maybe we could use that to give her that ring upgrade that she's wanted for so long. Well, I surprised my wife with the news that I had purchased her a brand new ring upgrade, and at first she was completely thrilled. She couldn't believe it, and then as the reality sort of set in, she started to think that maybe this was a little premature. Maybe we should reinvest this money back into more investments, which I was totally not expecting to hear that. Well, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't shed too many tears about that. I ended up calling the company and canceling the ring, and I was able to get all my money back on that order, but I was blown away that my wife had come that far, because we came from a point where I took a lot of convincing just to get her into real estate investing in the first place, and now she really sees the vision at this point to where she's willing to give up a ring upgrade. So anyways, the reason I tell you guys this story is because the money I almost used for that ring made up a good chunk of change of the down payment I would have used on the rental property that came up just 1 month later. You see, at that point in time, I didn't have a lot of extra money laying around, maybe an extra 20 grand. So if I was buying that ring, there's no way I could also buy the rental property as well. So anyways, about a month later, my agent hits me up. She says that she has an off-market lead and she wanted to see if I was interested, and I told her absolutely. Well, this deal was the perfect BRRRR deal. It was an off-market lead, and it was actually with a wholesaler that I had already worked with before. Now the house itself was a single family house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, just over 1,000 square feet, built in 1920. It's also located in a C+ neighborhood in a very gentrifying part of the Knoxville, Tennessee market. Now if you guys follow the channel, you know I love targeting these highly gentrifying areas where things are changing rapidly. These are just areas where the city might be doing new developments or where many of the flippers might be active, and so because of that, the area is changing rapidly and pushing house prices up at a very fast speed. So this property was definitely outdated and it could definitely use a facelift, but at the same time, it was in good overall shape as a property. They were were asking $78,000 for the house, and overall it was going to be a medium cosmetic fixer-upper. So we're not talking about moving walls, we're not talking about additions or anything like that, but just simply making renovations and updating floors, new paint, new kitchen, bathroom, things like that. So some of the things I liked about this deal, first of all, was the margin. The margin I had to utilize the BRRRR strategy. So the purchase price was $78,000, the closing costs factor in around $4,000, the rehab I was estimating to be around $35,000, and so overall after that was done, I was figuring that the ARV, the after repair value, would come out to about $160,000. Then the plan would be to rent it out, refinance after owning it for 6 months, and by the time that happens, I get all my money back and have a free cash flowing rental property in a great up and coming neighborhood. Another thing I liked is it had a lot of major components updated. Starting with the plumbing was already updated throughout, so we had new PVC impex, which saves me about $5,000 in changing all the plumbing. It also had updated electrical, and the siding was in very good shape as well, so I didn't need to change that either. Now the type of siding for this house was vinyl siding, which is pretty cool because vinyl siding comes in a color and you don't need to repaint it or anything like that, so it's very easy to maintain since it already arrives in a color. Fortunately, the color was neutral, which was great because from what I hear, vinyl siding can be a pretty big pain to paint. There's normally lots of prep work involved compared to other types of siding when you're painting vinyl siding, and from what I also understand, you need to use a special type of paint when you're painting vinyl siding. So for all these reasons, I was pretty glad to see that we had a nice beige neutral colored siding and it was already in good shape, so we could just leave it alone. The roof was also newer, maybe a few years old. The windows had been replaced semi-recently, and so they were dual pane windows, and so that saved me alone about $5,000 to $6,000 as well. And so overall, I would say as a whole, the house was just pretty well maintained, and that was a good sign, especially as a rental property, because it means it's less likely I'm going to have all these future maintenance problems that they neglected throughout the years of ownership. So I ended up purchasing this property at $78,000. I was able to use conventional financing, which is pretty crazy because most wholesalers will not let you use financing. You normally always have to use cash when you're dealing with a wholesaler, but in this case I was able to use conventional financing, and part of that was that the house was in really good condition, and so we wouldn't have a problem qualifying. Now like I said, I had a little over $20K to work with at the time, so I used that money to cover my down payment, my closing costs, and my inspections. Now with that said, I didn't have enough cash to cover everything, including the rehab. So for the rehab, what I did is I used a line of credit that I had. You see, back when I started real estate in 2017, I opened my line of credit with City National Bank. It was an unsecured personal line of credit. I was able to get as low as a 6% interest rate on that, and I had worked up, gradually built it up over time to a $25,000 line of credit. So that covered most of the funds I needed for the rehab, but for the extra amount I needed, I was also working on a fix and flip at that time, and I figured by the time I needed that money, I will have already sold the fix and flip, and I can use the profits of that to pay for it. And worst case scenario, I still had property reserves I could always dig into if I needed to. So anyways, I went through the purchase, we went through inspections, they came back fine, we went through the appraisal, it came back fine, and we were able to close on this property with a conventional loan. So I got to work right away on this. I didn't want to overspend on this project, but at the same time, I normally like to keep pretty similar to what the flips in the area are doing as far as finish level. But with that said, if something was in good shape and it didn't outdate the property, I would just keep it and leave it alone. For instance, with the exterior, we kept the siding, we didn't really do anything with that, but we did change the exterior lights because they were very outdated. We repainted the front door, we repainted the deck, we changed out the exterior knobs and hinges, things like that. So the bulk of the work of what we actually did on this project was on the interior. We ended up changing the flooring, we ripped out the old carpets and did luxury vinyl plank flooring throughout. Now vinyl plank is a great flooring to use on your rental properties because it's very durable, it's scratch resistant, it's water resistant, plus it just looks nice in general. So overall, it's a great flooring to use on any rental property. Now there was a lot of existing paneling on the walls, and because I like to keep my rental properties at a higher level, I did do a lot of new drywall on the ceilings and on the walls throughout the house. Now rather than tearing it all out and doing brand new drywall, I was able to just keep the paneling in place and drywall over the paneling and drywall over the existing ceiling. So that was able to save me some money. I also did new interior paint throughout, so we had gray walls, white trim and ceiling. We were able to keep some of the original baseboard in place, and we replaced it wherever it was needed, obviously keeping it consistent in a room so it doesn't look out of place. We replaced the light fixtures throughout, and I always like to use ceiling fans in the living room and the bedrooms because I could get these ceiling fans for pretty cheap, and it just makes it more convenient for someone who lives there. Now for the kitchen, I ripped out the old cabinets and put in brand new white shaker style cabinets. I also put in some granite countertops, a subway tile backsplash, new kitchen faucet and handles, and of course, new stainless steel appliances. For the For the bathroom, I was able to keep the existing tub that was there, but I did end up removing the existing tub surround and I replaced that with a nice subway tile surround. I also replaced the old vanity, mirror, and vanity lights. I replaced the shower trim kit, vanity faucet, along with a new toilet, which is always a good idea to do whenever you have a rental property. Always change out the toilet just in case there may have been some leaks with that toilet that you may not know about. So that's pretty much everything I did. I do try to do all the little things too that people don't think about, so it doesn't come across like a half-baked rehab. So changing out all the doorknobs, changing all the outlets, all the vent registers, little things like that that go a long way to make it look like a complete rehab. So with that said, here's how the numbers ended up working out. So my down payment was a 20% down payment, which meant $15,600 at the closing table. I also had to pay about $4,500 in closing costs, and the rehab ended up coming out a little bit more than I expected at around $39,500. Now I also had holding costs during the time period that I was holding the property, so between utilities, line of credit costs, mortgage payments, all those kind of things, it came out to around $3,700. So my total investment for this property was somewhere in the neighborhood of $63,300. Now it was around 8 or 9 months later when the property was finally appraised, and the ARV ended up coming a little higher than I originally anticipated. It came back at $169,000. Now for the refinance, I could have gotten up to an 80% loan to value if I was willing to go the non-conventional route, but because I wanted to keep my cash flow a little better, I decided to go the conventional route, keep my interest rates lower, and do a 75% loan to value on the cash out. So this just means that based on the value of the property, which was $169,000, I would be able to pull up to 75% of that out, which was $126,750. Now I also generated rent from the time I finished renovating the property, and so during that time I rented the property out for $1,275 a month, and so over the entire period I was able to net around $6,000. Again, this is not counting the mortgage payments that I already counted against my expenses. So in total at this point I have around $133,250 to pay back everything I owe. Now of course with a refinance you got to pay back your original mortgage, so paying that back I was looking at about $62,000 I owed at the time. I also had to pay for closing costs on the refinance, which ended up coming out to around $7,000. Then the rest of the money went to reimbursing myself for the initial down payment, for the closing costs, for the rehab costs, and so after all that I was left with about $500 on top of what I originally started with. So overall it was a really successful BRRRR, and although I could have pulled out even more money had I gone the 80% loan to value route, I'm still glad I went for the lower interest rate because now my property cash flow is even better. So speaking of cash flow, here's how the cash flow numbers right after we did the refinance. So like I mentioned, we rented it out for $1,275 a month. Our PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance came out to $730 a month, budget 10% for our property management fees, and then another 5% for future vacancies. Also, because we completely renovated the property, the maintenance on the property has been very low, so altogether between maintenance and capital expenditures, I would budget another $150 a month. Then for utilities, the tenant is actually responsible for that, and the city covers the trash pickup, so overall our net rental income on this property, even including future expenses, comes out to around $200 a month. Now at this point I was already pretty happy because we have a free rental property that's cash flowing us over $200 a month, factoring in all expenses, but it got even better because in the last year, rent growth has been significant in Knoxville. So my lease with my tenant recently expired, and so because of that, I've been able to grow my rent from $1,275 a month all the way to $1,600 a month. So using those same calculations, when the property's occupied and we have a month with no maintenance issues, we're cash flowing up to $710 a month now. But even factoring future vacancies and future maintenance and capital expenditures, we're still at a net cash flow overall of $480 a month. So overall, I am super happy with this deal. It makes for a great property. I love the area. It's very up and coming. The cash flow is great. It's very low maintenance. And so overall, it makes for the perfect BRRRR deal and a great long-term hold. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about how I was able to BRRRR this deal from out of state, and hopefully you guys learned something. And if you feel like you gained some value today, do me a favor and support the channel by smashing that like button. And if you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell to watch more content like this. Also, if you have any questions about utilizing the BRRRR strategy or investing out of state, let me know in the comments below and I'll definitely do my best to respond. Also, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at The Out of State Investor. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.